Today is June the 20th, 2024. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Today I am in Oklahoma City at the Oklahoma Black Museum and Performing Arts Center. I hope I got that right. With Maurice Spears, who is here to talk about his experiences growing up in the northeast neighborhood of Oklahoma City. So thank you very much for coming today. Before we get into the neighborhood part of the project, let's learn a little bit about you. Start wherever you like.
Well, I was born here in Oklahoma City, 1937, and I went to Inman E. Page Elementary School, which no longer exists. And I went to secondary school at Douglas High School. Began in 1949, and that's the year that I began playing the trombone. And we had teachers that we had classes that would teach you to play, and furnished instruments. Not very good, but they were instruments. So that was my beginning in music, which has taken me up to this point. Because when I finished high school, the band director said he could get me a scholarship. And I first went to Arkansas State College in Pine Bluff for one semester. And then I transferred to Langston University and graduated there in 1959. After that, I went to OU, and I did one semester, and then I was drafted into the Army. I spent 2 years. I went to the Army element of the Navy School of Music, and I played in the 62nd Army Band in Fort Bliss, Texas, which is in El Paso. And once that was finished, I came back to Oklahoma City. I did 2 more semesters at OU, the University of Oklahoma, working on a master's degree, but I didn't stay on campus, and so that made it a little bit difficult. I did 25 hours of a 32-hour program, but I never finished. So after playing here in Oklahoma City for a period of time, I moved to California. Oh, I was a school teacher as well. I taught 2 years at Kennedy Junior High School when it first opened. And then I went to California. I worked as a substitute teacher, and then I began getting lots of calls to play music. And I traveled a lot. I played with Aretha Franklin, Diana Ross, and the Supremes, and others like that. Ray Charles. I went on tour with Ray Charles in 1957 and 58. Went to Europe for the first time with him. And after that, I came back and was freelancing in California when I met Oliver Nelson, who was composing music for it wasn't a sitcom, it was a television show called Ironsides. So I did Ironside with Oliver Nelson, and then we went from that to $6 Million Man. And other phonograph recordings, Oliver died at a young age in 1975, so that cut that short. But through Oliver, I met Quincy Jones and went to Japan for the first time with Quincy, and we did a lot of work together. And so it's been quite varied. I played with other Count Basie's band. I played with Lionel Hampton's orchestra, the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra, Gerald Wilson, the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra, to name a few. And so I had quite a career. I lived in Los Angeles for 50 years. I was busy the whole time.
Did you drive in that traffic that whole time?
Oh, yeah, because we had to get around doing, we called them casuals, playing concerts and different events around the city. And they were in various places you had to get there, so, you know.
Well, 50 years, that's a significant amount of time.
Yeah. So now I'm back home in Oklahoma City.
And when did that happen?
9 years ago. I came back in in 2015. And
You could have retired anywhere. Why back here?
I could have retired while here.
Anywhere. So why here?
Oh, why here?
Yeah.
Well, I have property here.
Okay.
So, and I knew people and I knew the area, and so it seemed a good place to come. My wife has roots here because her father, the well-known musician Don Cherry, was born here. And so she had relatives here. She had roots here. And we both had roots here, but even though she was born in California. So that's why I'm back in Oklahoma City.
Or where do you consider home?
Home, actually, Los Angeles feels like home.
Okay.
But I'm becoming more comfortable here than I was initially.
Well, initially when you went to California, why there? I mean, what was the draw for California?
Well, it was twofold. First of all, my parents had moved there in 1963, and I hadn't seen them in 3 years. So I wanted to visit my parents. And secondly, music, because there were limited opportunities here. There still are. And so I went there hoping that something would unfold, and it did. Enough for me to stay. And even though I had a job here as a teacher, I had tenure as a teacher. And I also had engagements booked for my band. I had a 13-piece band. And I had engagements here in the city and in Wichita, Kansas. But it was a hard decision, but I made the right one when I stayed. So that's why I was in Los Angeles.
Okay, and then your parents had moved there. What was why had they gone there?
Well, my parents here in Oklahoma City, my parents had a café for decades. And that business was dwindling due to integration, really. Maybe we'll get into that later, but there wasn't as much of an opportunity to continue in that business here. And I had an aunt in California and my mother's sister, and she encouraged them to come there, said there were lots of opportunities for my dad in his business. So they moved there and made a home of it, and they never came back here to live, but I wanted to see them. I went to visit them, and I stayed. And later my brother came, so we had a family there.
So what was the name of the cafe here?
Midway Inn.
Midway.
Yes, the original location was on Northeast 3rd and Durland, and later it moved to Northeast 2nd and Stiles.
And what kind of foods did they serve?
Soul food.
Soul food.
Good food.
Turnip greens and pinto beans.
Yes.
That's
yes.
my kind of food too. And so how long did they have it? You said about 10 years?
Well, no. When I was born in 1937. They had the cafe then.
A long time. Okay.
And they kept it until 1966, 63.
Almost 30 years. Almost 30 years. Close to 30 years.
Well,
did you have?
See.
Yeah, from 39 to 63. Do my math.
Yeah.
25-ish.
Okay.
Did you have to work in it?
Oh yeah, we worked in the cafe. We I had a brother and two sisters. They're all deceased now. We all worked in the cafe. We did everything from washing dishes, peeling potatoes, to being waiters and waitresses and cashiers and errand boys, delivery boys, whatever it took. We all did that. Yeah.
And did you get a little jingle in your pocket? For
Very
doing
little.
It? Very little.
Later, I worked in high. When I was in high school, I became a banquet waiter at the Skirvin Hotel, and I must have been maybe in the 11th and 12th grades when I did that, and that was quite interesting, quite an education.
I imagine you saw some politicians come through.
Well, I'm sure there were, but we didn't actually meet them. There were all sorts of programs there. The Kiwanis Club and various other organizations had banquets there. Sometimes luncheons, and yeah, they did have distinguished speakers. But we were busy serving the guests there, and I was never involved with with those distinguished ones. And sometimes they had smaller gatherings, and well, I was just a teenager, and they had professional waiters there that had worked at the Parker House in Chicago and other places like that. They knew the fine art of table waiting. I was a banquet waiter, so that's like mass production. But it was interesting. It was quite an education for me, and we made a little money, and so it was
A good experience.
good experience. Yes.
So, how far was the cafe from your home where you grew up? The house.
Okay. The home that I was born in, well, I mean, the home that I lived in when I was born in the hospital, but was on Northeast 4th Street, 4th and Lindsay, which is it's less than half a mile. So, we would walk, well, we walked everywhere then, but we would walk to the cafe on 3rd and Durland, but then later, it was on 2nd and Stiles, which was a little extra distance, but not that far, maybe a mile, no more than that. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we were accustomed to walking a lot. It didn't matter.
Well, I don't know Oklahoma history too well. Was there a streetcar?
There weren't streetcars, but there were buses.
Okay.
But for the distance that I was going, it was faster to walk.
Faster to walk. Yes.
Then later, my family moved on to Northeast 13th Street, which was a little further away from the cafe. It was maybe 2-3 miles then, no more difficult. But walking was the style of transportation, and so that's what we did.
Okay, so from the neighborhood, give us the geography part of it, like street to street. What were the boundaries of the neighborhood?
That I lived,
of your youth, the neighborhood you consider you grew up in.
Let's see. I would say the western. Let's see if that's right. Yeah, the western boundary would be Walnut, and southern boundary. I personally didn't go much past 2nd Street, Northeast 2nd Street. And then later, of course, I lived on Northeast 13th Street. So that's a little distance. And going east, well, when I was in high school, the Douglas High School was on 5th and High. And later it went out to Eastern, which is now Martin Luther King.
Okay.
And even beyond that, because there were those that lived in Edwards Addition, as it was called, Carverdale Addition. I didn't live there, the fairgrounds, but I lived west of the fairgrounds, maybe a mile or two. And on 13th Street, I lived north of the fairgrounds. So 13th, well, we would go up to 23rd and do things there. But I don't recall growing up doing much outside of those boundaries.
Well, the other neighborhoods you mentioned, like Coverdale and Fairgrounds, were there rivalries with those kids?
No, I didn't know about any rivalries.
Okay.
It's like we were all on the same team.
Okay.
So, it was homogenous, yeah,
Yeah.
good times.
And I guess they would have all gone to the same high school.
Yeah, oh
So-
yes,
so
we all
that
went to the same high school. Everyone knew everyone. Not only your neighbors that were around you, but people miles away. You knew them and knew where they lived. You could walk to their homes too, so it was quite nice. It was safe. Oh, one thing I might mention, I mentioned to my wife that growing up, of course, there were oil wells all around. Everywhere you looked, there was an oil well. And then now, I don't know what happened. I was away 50 years. And also, there were fruit trees. There were trees that had peaches, apricots, plums, and we would have a ball as my buddies and I would play in the neighborhood, and if we got hungry, we just go to a tree and shake it, and the fruit would fall, and we get it and run away because the homeowners didn't like it because they had to clean up what we didn't take. But we get what we wanted and run away and have our lunch and continue playing. Oh, it was wonderful.
And you don't see too many fruit trees at all, really, around.
None.
anymore.
I don't know what happened. I told my wife, I said, what happened? I don't know. Because I was away, like I say, 50 years, so.
Well, the drought may have taken care of some of them.
Then too, urban renewal came in.
Mm.
And now this was just about the time that I was kind of leaving the city. I graduated from high school in 1955. And then I went to Arkansas for one semester, and then I went to Langston, where I stayed out on campus most of the time. Even during the summer, I went to summer school. That first year after my first year of college, I went to Cleveland. I spent the summer in Cleveland, Ohio. And
Quite a change from here.
yeah, it was a big change. I loved it there because I was interested in playing jazz, and there was more music there than there was here. More opportunities, but I didn't know anyone. And the interesting thing, there was a friend of mine that we graduated high school together. His name was Henry Smith, and he moved to Cleveland, and he invited me to come there. And he said, well, just come and check it out. So after my freshman year in college, I went to Cleveland and spent 3 months. But I wasn't able to make any connections. I wasn't able to get any work. I think there was a recession that year. I'm not quite sure. Mm-hmm. But when autumn was approaching, I decided to come back and finish my education at Langston, which was a good move. But interestingly, he told me that after I left, some musicians came looking for me. They had heard me practicing day by day, and they liked what they heard, I guess. And when they no longer heard me practicing, they came looking for me. And he said, well, he went back to Oklahoma. Well, had they come earlier, maybe I never would have come back to Oklahoma. But I hadn't made any connections there, and I had a scholarship at Langston, so I said, well, why forfeit that,
What was your major there? Music?
Music education.
Yeah.
They didn't have a music school. They still don't. They have a music department. and they don't offer. Well, I'm not sure about now. I don't know what the curriculum is now, but applied music, like music composition, something of that sort. They didn't offer that. They offered music education, which served me well because, like I say, I did teach at Kennedy Junior High School for 2 years here, and when I went to Los Angeles, I worked as a substitute teacher because getting into music in a big city is not easy. It takes time. You have to work your way in. So you need some means of support. I didn't want to work as a substitute teacher, but it worked out very well for me because you could pick and choose the days that you would go. And sometimes I would get called for a record date, so I wanted to make a rehearsal, or there were jobs during the day, some kind of events. There are always events in Los Angeles. And so the days that I had calls to play music, I didn't teach. But if I didn't have any work playing music, I would teach. So it worked out well for me. I did that for, well, I went there in 1966, and then I was doing various jobs. Like there was what we call the West Coast Motown Band, and that was a group of horn players that would accompany the artists, the Motown artists that came on the West Coast. They would have their own rhythm sections, guitar, drums, bass, all of that. But the horns, they didn't carry. So we had a group there in Los Angeles that we would travel with them to Phoenix, Spokane, Seattle, wherever they were going, San Francisco, San Luis Obispo, San Diego. We traveled with them and played. So I was doing that. And then I got a call from Ray Charles, and he wanted me to go on his tour. He had 9-month tours. So I played his tour from the beginning of 1967, and I began again in 68. That's the year I first went to Europe, played Carnegie Hall, Central Park, Newport Jazz Festival. We played the big events. Ray Charles was very popular.
Yes.
And so it was quite a time, quite an education for me.
You called home and say, "Guess what I'm doing tonight, Mom?"
It was like a dream come true, really, so I loved it.
Well, the 60s were an interesting time to be traveling and dealing with all that too.
Yeah, it's true. We had I think a 2-week stint at the Latin Casino in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And the day that we arrived, Cherry Hill is very near Philadelphia. And wait a minute. Yeah. Yes. And so I went to Philadelphia to catch the bus. Because I was going to Dover, Delaware for a visit, and I noticed people were in the street demonstrating. I didn't know what this was about because I'd never been to the city before. And when I went to Dover and I came back to Philadelphia, while I was in Dover, I heard the news that Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated. So that's what the demonstrations were about. But I came back to Philadelphia to go to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, where the Latin Casino was, and we did a 2-week stint there. So yeah, there was a lot to learn during those days. And as we traveled through the East, we were mainly playing on the East Coast, and there had been a lot of demonstrations as a result of King's death. And cities had been burned and demolished, and we saw a lot of that, a lot of strife, a lot of homelessness. And, I grew up here in Oklahoma City. I wasn't aware of what was happening around the world. The news media wasn't as extensive then as it is now, and we just didn't know what was happening in other sectors. But I got a chance to see it for myself because Ray Charles was going everywhere, and I went with him. And I looked around. I was very curious. Each city, I would seek out the neighborhoods to see what's what. And I was really, really surprised to see all the homelessness, people in despair. I didn't know the world was like that, but it wasn't good.
Well, growing up in Oklahoma, how did you get your news? TV or newspaper or
We got it with great difficulty, to say the least. Actually, I didn't get much news really. That in our libraries we had the daily newspapers,
Okay.
but I didn't frequent that, and I really, be quite frank, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't.
I figured your parents might have heard things being in the cafe business.
Well, I'm sure they did, but
They didn't pass it on to their.
my parents were very busy. I'm sure they loved us but they didn't have a lot of time to spend with us, I'm sorry to say.
Had they grown up in Oklahoma City as well?
My father was from Texas, and my mother was born in Ardmore, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And her mother and siblings had migrated from Montgomery, Alabama to Oklahoma. And so that's somewhat the background of my family.
Well, how did they end up in Oklahoma City? Do you know?
Well, I think it had something to do with the land run in '89. And, that word got out. And so they came here in covered wagons and whatever they had, and by foot, and whatever mode of transportation suited them, and they settled in Ardmore, and branched out from there. Now, I'm sad to say that I don't know a lot about my family's background. When I was growing up, I didn't think a lot about it.
We don't.
And when I grew up and wanted to know, everyone was gone. So I'm finding out things now from Ancestry.com, or whatever it's called.
Yep.
And things that are quite surprising. In fact, when we first after I sent in my DNA sample and they sent me some initial information, my wife said, "Maurice, you need to sit down." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, just have a seat. And then she showed me. And I said, wow. You get a lot of surprises when you look at that. You don't know who your relatives are until something like that happens.
Well, I'm just curious too how your parents would have met then if they were from different parts.
Well, I'd like to know that too.
Okay.
Really, it might sound strange, but like I said, my parents were very busy trying to make a living. My mother was running the café that her mother had begun, but her mother died in 1949, and my mother took the café on. And I was 12 years old when my grandmother died. But my mother was already running the cafe. It was like early morning until night. My dad was a head waiter at the Skirvin Hotel and at the Nichols Hills Golf and Country Club. It's the Oklahoma City Golf and Country Club now. Same venue.
Yeah.
I worked there myself, summers. I never liked that so much, but they were busy. They didn't spend a lot of time with us. And I'm not bitter about that. I wish they had, but I understood their circumstances. And so they didn't tell us a lot. At least they didn't tell me. I was the baby. And maybe they told my siblings things, but I didn't know. I don't know how they met. I don't know any of that.
No, you know. Okay.
I wish I did. Thankfully, I had an aunt in Ardmore that documented some things, and there were newspaper articles about her. She was a school teacher in Ardmore, and I got a chance to read some of those things, which were quite interesting. One that I'll just say this, it's only take a minute, but I found quite interesting is that the family migrated from Alabama to Ardmore, Oklahoma. They set up camp, and when they woke up the next morning, she said there were Indians surrounding them. They didn't harm them, but they were just looking. They were trying to figure it out. They said, who are these people and why are they here? And I guess it was my great-grandmother got busy making some sweet potato pies. And when she made the pies, she distributed to the Indians, and they loved it. She said from then on, they had friends, they had protection, they didn't have to worry about a thing. So, but I don't know much more about what happened with my family. Like I said, I wish I did. Maybe someday I will find out, but right now.
You just wonder why that particular neighborhood too, so you don't know that either.
No, I don't know.
Well, can you close your eyes and take us back to your childhood in that neighborhood and kind of describe what was around you, like churches, playgrounds, parks, whatever might have been within your circle?
Well, yeah, that was in my neighborhood. The building that's still there was, well, they built it a little bit later. It's a YMCA there on Northeast 4th Street. It's still there. There's a church. We attended an Episcopal church, which was 1 block from my home, and it was on the northwest corner of Northeast 3rd and Lindsay. And that was then if I'm not mistaken, the Morgan, I'm not quite sure. There were some places, okay, I'll say this. Well, the Jewel Theater, which is still there. They're making it some historical landmark now, I understand. It was maybe 3 blocks away from my home there on Northeast 4th Street. And we would go there almost daily to see films, 10 cents or 5 cents, whatever it costs. And I remember that Northeast 4th Street was like a hub. There were businesses there. In fact, at one point, my family had a restaurant there, and they named it after my sister Gresham. They call it Sean's. And east of there was Washington Park, okay, on Northeast 4th and High. And we used to go there and we would swim. And the football stadium was adjacent to it, going east. And north of there was Douglas High School, 1 block north. And that's where I went to high school from grade 7 to 11. And then we moved out to it was Eastern Avenue then. It's Martin Luther King now. And the school is out there. That was the old fairgrounds. The state fair would come and set up in that location each year. We always look forward to that. It was wonderful. remember they had a review there they called Harlem in Havana. And they had musicians and dancers and singers, and I loved it. And I look forward to that each year. So those were some of the places around that area. Now on Northeast 2nd Street, okay, the cafe that my family had was on the southwest corner of Northeast 2nd and Styles, Midway Inn Cafe. Across the street, going east, was L.E. Richardson had a gas station, service station, and that was quite a spot. A lot of cars in and out of that. It was a very busy area. Across, going north, yes, going north from the cafe. Okay, the cafe was on the southwest corner. On the northwest corner was Randolph Drug. And that was a place where you could get, prescriptions and over-the-counter medications, but they also had, a place you could get ice cream, you could get malts and shakes and coats, cherry coats, whatever they had. It was very nice. I used to get my hair cut next door. That was the Golden Oak Barber Shop, and that's where I would get my hair cut. And there was a tailor shop there. This guy named, I don't know what his real name was. They called him The George. And he had all of these fabulous clothes. He was a tailor. He made them himself. He had purple suits and yellow suits and red and orange and all of these different suits he would wear, and he would be, it was really something to see. I remember that. And then on the side where my parents had the cafe, going further west, that was the Black Dispatch, where they published the newspaper. And that was right there in the neighborhood. And then I became one of the carriers or salesmen, whatever. Every Thursday we would go there, whoever wanted to go, they'd give you a bunch of newspapers, and you go out in the neighborhood and you sell them for 5 cents. We go door to door and Black Dispatch, and something, okay, and we go back and take the money and we get our cut, which was 2 or 3 cents, I don't know. We never made any money, but it was an activity, and you grow up, you do what everyone else does, and that's what we did. We would sell the Black Dispatch newspaper.
On foot or a bicycle?
Oh, no. Well, you could go either way. I was on foot. I never was too successful with that, but, it was a way of life. That's what you did, and everyone else was doing it. Why not? So we did that.
Well, if you were to do something you weren't supposed to, who would discipline you?
Did I do anything
I don't know. I'd say at least once, maybe.
That it's an interesting thing. I got one whipping when I was in high school, and I wasn't guilty. I did some other things that I should have been punished for, but they didn't catch me. But what happened was some of my buddies were involved in shooting dice during the lunch hour. I never gambled, and to this day, I've never gambled. My dad was a gambler, and he wasn't very good at it, and he would lose the family's money, and I think that's what deterred me, because I said to myself, if the way he acted with my mom at times, because she would bring money from the cafe and he needed it to pay off his gambling debts. And I just said, if that's the way gambling makes you act, I'll never do it. And I never have. But no, I got off this. So you asked me a question.
Who disciplined you?
Who disciplined me?
Uh-huh. And you were telling.
You know, I don't remember getting. Now, my siblings used to get whipping. My grandmother and my father would whip them. They line up and one after the other, but they didn't whip me. And so, this one time in school, when those guys were gambling and the teacher came, they all ran away. He recognized some of them, and they were my buddies. So if they were involved, they figured I was involved. And they called me into the office and gave me a whipping. I didn't do it. I wasn't involved in that. But that's one time I did get a whipping. And I don't recall any of them.
I just wondered if the neighbors could have taken, done something too, and then told your parents. I mean, could neighbors discipline you?
Well, that never happened to me, and I don't recall that. It may have happened to others, but I did things. I'm not saying I was an angel. I did things, but I just wasn't caught. I wasn't caught. We would shake these trees, and all this fruit would fall off, and that wasn't a big thing like stealing or breaking in somebody's home. We didn't do that kind of thing, but it's something that the neighbors didn't like. I do remember Tabernacle Baptist Church was on 3rd Street, and trying to remember the cross street, but the school was right there adjacent to it. But we would slip into this church, my buddies and I. We never did it. We never stole anything. We didn't break anything. But we had a lot of fun because they had a caretaker, and he was handicapped. He walked with a limp and had a cane. And we would go and slip into the church and make some noise, and he would come after us he would try to hit us with the cane, and we would run away, and we just laugh, and we had such fun. But he was angry with us. He didn't like it at all, which I understand now. But that was the way that we had fun. And so that wasn't very good. But I was never disciplined about it. My parents never knew anything about that. And then again, as I said to you before, my parents were very busy with their work. They were almost never at home, I'm sorry to say. So they didn't have time to discipline me for anything. But I wasn't the type of person that was a juvenile delinquent or anything like that. None of my buddies were. We didn't get in trouble with the law. And at that time, you could just be out at all hours of the day and night, and you didn't have to worry about being abducted or anything.
And you knew everybody in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So that communication chain would reach home pretty quickly if you were.
Indeed, it would. Now, I do remember this one time. Well, as I grew up and I was a young adult, we would go down to Municipal Auditorium. I think they call it the Civic Center now or something like that. There would be dances. The traveling bands would come through, and they would play downtown at the Municipal Auditorium. Zebra Room was downstairs, the big room upstairs. And we didn't always have money to purchase a ticket, but there were like the main entrance, and then there were side entrances, and they had people guarding the doors. Well, we could give them maybe half the amount and they would let us in. This one time, the last time I did it, could have been really bad for me, but we slipped in, and one of the roving people that was to keep order, I guess, saw us, and he started running after us. So I ran from one side to the next and who came in this door and went out that door. But he kept chasing me. I didn't come in alone. There must have been half a dozen of us, but he chased me. And when I ran out the door, there were me and a policeman, and there were others out there, and they saw me run out the door, down the stairs, and across the parking lot. So they just assumed I had committed a crime. Well, I guess it was a crime, and I slipped in. I didn't pay the regular admission. I did pay, and they chased after me, and I was about to outrun him, and he shot up in the air, so I stopped. And when he saw, he said, "This is little Spears. What you doing, boy?" And when I explained what happened, he said, "Oh, go home." And I never went back to sit up in again. I learned my lesson. But you asked me about discipline.
Yes.
Was that. Now, musically, I had buddies that played music. We all were in school together. And there were a lot of places to play music here then. And sometimes we would get together on Sunday afternoon, and we would go from place to place. They would have bands here, there, and the other. Everywhere there were bands. And we would just get in, we would sit in with these bands and play. That was what we did. It was a lot of fun. It was an education for us to do that. And we enjoyed it. And, it paid dividends later, and at the time I was quite bold, I guess. I would just get up there and start playing. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was willing to try, and sometimes you just have to do that, So we did, and when we had our own bands, when we would be hired for bands, we make $5-10. If you made $20, oh boy, that was really a good gig, you called it. Later, after, I'm trying to think. Okay, I went off to college. I had played in the bands. Oh, I want to tell you about this. On 2nd Street, the Aldrich Theater. And I didn't know, but it was owned by Miss Bro, Zelia Bro, who was the band teacher at Douglas High School. And she owned that theater. I never knew that. But at that theater, in addition to motion pictures, they had traveling shows. Well, one of the good thing about my parents having the restaurant, the café on 2nd Street, that's where all the musicians came. Charlie Christian played down on 2nd Street and many others. And the bands would come down there. There were hotels there, Little Page Hotel, and there were 2 hotels on that street. One was there on 2nd and Central. The other was up on the hill at 2nd and Walnut. And they would stay at those hotels, and then they would come down into the neighborhood. The White House Cafe was there. My folks had the Midway Inn up on the other end, and there were others in the street. Well, they would come and eat. In my parents' cafe, they had what they call a jukebox, and which records would spin. You put in 5 cents, whatever. And up on the wall, they had a little miniature band that when you put your money in the machine, in the jukebox, a curtain would open up, and they would be going back and forth with the music. And so a lot of the traveling musicians ate in my parents' cafe. I wish I knew the names of them, because I'm sure some of them became famous later, but I never knew their names. But the thing that really got me interested was that the band from the school would march in parades to advertise a football game. So the parade would start on 4th Street at High, and it would go west to Lindsay. That's where I live, on 4th and Lindsay. It would come there, and it would turn the corner and go south. And so whenever there was a parade, I was right there watching. And I saw the musicians, and they had their uniforms, and it looked glamorous, and I loved that.
Yep.
So when I got to high school, I said I want to play music, and so my buddies and I went to the band director, Willie E. Perry. We said, we want to play music. He said, okay, well, what do you want to play? We told him, and I said I wanted to play the drums. When we went up to the band room, he handed me a trombone. I said, I don't want this. He said, well, that's all we have. Take it or leave it. So I took it. And now I'm out there with the band. I'm marching, and we would go up. But on 2nd Street, now this is what I'm getting to. They had these shows. Okay, the musicians travel in buses. They had their own buses. And on the side of the bus, they would have the name painted on there. Roy Liggins and his Honey Drippers, and Earl Bostic Orchestra, and Benny Carter, whatever it was. And I see that, and it looked real glamorous to me. I didn't know they were in poverty. But they would play at the Aldrich Theater. They had shows that featured entertainers, singers, musicians. It was fabulous. I could go there for the movie, and I could see all these entertainers playing. And then they would come to our cafe, and so I became interested in that type thing. And when I got a scholarship to go to Langston, then I became more proficient on my instrument. And like I say, in the Army, I went to the Army element of the Davis School of Music, and I worked on my master's degree at the University of Oklahoma. So finally, when I went to California, I started on the trombone. There's a tenor trombone, which is what you normally see. But I played the bass trombone, which had a little more, I call it plumbing. But there were tuning slides that you could play down in the register of the tuba. Well, that was something that was fairly novel to jazz bands back in those days. And I had seen them in magazines, and I went and told my parents, I said, I want one of these trombones. They said, okay. Now that's one thing about it. Like I said, my parents weren't home that much. They didn't spend a lot of time, but they did buy me instruments. When I grew up, we had a baby grand piano in our living room, and my sisters took piano lessons. My brother and I did not, but we became the professional musicians. So they bought me a bass trombone, and when I went to California, I heard this on the radio. My dad used to listen to this jazz station, and it said that there was a rehearsal every Saturday at Grant's Music Center on 3rd and Venice, and if you want to play, just come up and bring your instrument. So I did that. And I played, and they said, hey, you sound pretty good. And the guys encouraged me. They said, you're going to do real good in this city. I said, really? I like that. And so when it was time to go back and teach school, it was a big decision, but I decided to stay. But I kind of got away from the fact that on 2nd Street, that's what you really want to know about. 2nd Street was buzzing with activity in those days. We went down there. I wanted my wife to see it We were down there maybe 3 weeks ago. It's nothing like it was then.
Well, that's a good one. Then versus now, so.
Yeah, it's a whole different scene now.
Well, back then when you were the audiences, were they integrated or was it mostly?
No, they were not. I'm sure they would have welcomed that, but it was not. And
well, were you at Douglas? No, you would have been out before integration took place.
integration came like the year that I graduated from Douglas, 1955.
Okay.
I think that's the year that it began because it was the Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, I think it was, and 55. But it was very slow going initially. Well, I guess it still is. But I always went to segregated schools from kindergarten through college. It was always segregated. When I went to the University of Oklahoma for my master's degree, that was a challenge because the culture was different. I'm out on this campus. There were other blacks there, not in abundance, but there were others. And I just tell you truthfully, I don't feel that I got a fair shake. It was discouraging to me, and I'll tell you why. When I went back I had done an initial semester, and then I was drafted into the Army. I'd spent 2 years there, and I came back and went back to OU. And they asked me to play in, they had an opera there that year, the Opera Carmen. And they had musicians to play, but they asked me to play because the trombone parts were written in the tenor clef rather than the bass clef, and they didn't have enough players that could play that, but I could. So they asked me to do it. But, my grade, I got a B, but I was the one taking the lead and showing the others how to do it. And they got the A and I got the B. Okay, I had classes, instrumental arranging, same thing. They marveled at some of the things that I had produced because at Langston, my last year, Dr. T.J. Anderson came. He had just gotten his doctorate, and he was the head of the music department. He took me under his wing, taught me a lot of things that worked so well for me later in my professional life. And I used those things at OU, but I just don't feel like I got a fair shake because they asked me to do all these things. I went on tour with the concert band and lots of things that I did there, but it didn't really work out for me. I still don't have my master's degree. Now, I will say this, I'm lacking, I guess, seven credits. It's a 32-unit program, and I have 25, so I need 7 for my master's degree. But here's the thing. With my background, if you go to Google and you put my name in the search box and you see
lots of stuff, yes.
Have you looked? Okay.
I have looked.
And then at the bottom there's a link to allmusic.com. If you go there and put my name in the search box, it has a discography of the people that I recorded with. I don't know if you did that.
I didn't do that.
Well, try it.
I'll do that.
And it's very impressive, I will say. People tell me all the time, they say, Maurice, you're famous. I say, I'm not famous, but I work with a lot of famous people. But I'm not famous. But my work record is such that most universities would grant you those additional hours on your professional record.
Right.
I haven't asked them to do it at the University of Oklahoma. I think they should.
I would agree.
I think I should get my master's degree. I would like to have it. I worked for it.
Yes.
It wouldn't be an honorary degree because I worked for it. I accumulated 25 units out of 32. But anyway, those things helped me. Okay, T.J. Anderson taught me something. Um, Copying music. And I should have brought something along to demonstrate that. But what it is, okay, a composer or an arranger will take what is a score pad, and it has lines for each instrument that will be playing this song. And he writes all of that on this big pad, but each musician needs his own copy. He has a copy for himself, the conductor score. But as a copyist, I would take the score and write out the individual parts for the musician. Okay, so at Langston, T.J. Anderson came and he taught me how to use they didn't have copyist pens back we're talking about back in the 50s now, mid 50s. He would take Esterbrook pens and sandpaper and he would sand them down and give them an angle and so forth. And the ink that we used, and he taught me all of this. And when I went to California, I was asked to write arrangements for 2 or 3 record dates, and I did. They came out fairly well. But the thing is, I copied the music for each individual. And I remember this one guy that saw this and he said, Maurice, who copied this music for you? And I said, well, I copied it myself. He said, really? He said, will you copy some for me? And I said, okay. I didn't have many playing jobs in those days, so I had time to do it. So I copied music for him, and then others saw it. And then they started calling, and I became a music copyist. But, my name is on a lot of music because at the bottom of the page I would always put music preparation by Maurice Spears. I wish I had brought something to show, but I wasn't thinking about this. I forgot I even had this interview until a couple hours ago. And so I've copied music for everybody. Lena Horne, Lionel Hampton. I've copied a lot of music for famous people. And at the bottom of the page, my name is there. So, in fact, I remember this one guy. I was in Tokyo one time. And one of the Japanese musicians invited us, said, well, I want you to go to this rehearsal with us and bring your instruments you might want to play. So I did play a couple of songs, and the song that we played at the bottom, it said music preparation by Maurice Spears. We're in Tokyo, and this band is playing the music that I had copied. So I became very proficient using this technique that I learned at Langston from T.J. Anderson, who he wrote music for the Oklahoma City Symphony at that time under Guy Frazier Harrison was the conductor. And he would take us to the concerts from Langston on Tuesday nights and hear the music. And he's he's in his 90s now. And I guess he would be. I'm 87 myself, and he was my teacher at Langston. So, that carried me a long way. And then later, in the late 80s, 89, 90, then the digital music copying came in. So I went to school at West LA College in Los Angeles, and I learned to use the computers, all the programs, the Word Perfect, and all of those things. And I got one of the music copying programs, and I learned that. And I became a pioneer in digital music copying for pop and jazz music in Los Angeles. There was quite a feedback at first because people don't like change. It doesn't matter what it is.
Doesn't matter.
And so you're going from pen and ink to digital music, and it took them a while to get used to it. And the programs were in their infancy as well. They're much more sophisticated now. And so I made a living as a music copyist and a bass trombonist. But I learned those things at Douglas High School, at Langston, and at OU. And they carried me halfway around the world, playing music. And because I didn't know what else I was going to do, I didn't have, in those days, I didn't have any guidance. Like in school, they had counselors, but they didn't bother with me. I wasn't really a good student in school because I didn't have anyone to help me at home. I didn't know I knew my alphabet, but I didn't know how to add and subtract. I didn't know how to conjugate verbs. I didn't know any of that. I was kind of a lost soul in high school. But what happened was, in my senior year, we were preparing for a football halftime show. The band goes out on the field. And the instructor, Buford, they call him Buck Buford. And he came up to me and said, Maurice, would you like to go to college? Because if so, I can get you a scholarship. And I said, really? I never thought about going to college. I didn't know what I would do. I had no guidance, no direction. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm in my senior year in high school. I didn't know what I would do. I didn't even think about it. So when he said that, I really buckled down. I knew there was a newsstand downtown that had some books. English made simple, math made simple, all of that. I got $5 each. I got a bunch of those books, and I went home and I studied. I learned math. I learned English. I learned all of that over in the months leading up to college, because I didn't do well in high school. If you look at my transcript, I had a lot of D's and D minuses.
We all do.
Well, so your scholarship was not academic.
Oh, no, it wasn't academic. But I finished cum laude at Langston. I did. I learned what I needed to know, and I had a very good memory. And I don't have that memory now. That's why I forgot about this interview. But
did you have a job while you were at Langston?
My job was playing in the band.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, we played for, of course, the football games. We played for homecoming festivities, whatever they needed music. We would go out in the community and play. Sometimes we play parades, and if they had events and they needed music, we would go and do that.
Okay.
So that was my job, and playing music. And it's pretty much been my job throughout life. Like I say, I did teach school for a while, but...
So when you graduated from Langston, you were thinking, I wanted to be a school teacher?
I didn't really want to be a school teacher, but I did try to get some job. I'm glad they didn't hire me, because it would have been a mess. It would have been a mess, I'm telling you. But I think there was a recession that year. I'm not really sure. And I didn't get any work. So since I didn't get any job offers, I decided I would go to school at OU. I did a semester there.
In music again?
In music. And then I was drafted into the Army. And I continued playing music in the Army.
Do you still have your very first trombone?
No, I don't.
No, you didn't keep it?
I didn't keep any of them. I kind of regret it. You know, some of those instruments were pretty good.
Yeah.
But as I would get a new one, I would sell, you know, I would make them available to guys and at a nominal amount.
Well, once you started with the trombone, did you have a mentor, someone you wanted to be like?
Yes, I did. I did. There was a musician here named Harold Roberts. Wonderful, wonderful player. Such beautiful music he played. I don't know how he learned to play like that here. Actually, he wasn't from, I think he came here from Okmulgee or somewhere like that.
But Oklahoma.
Yeah. I'm trying to, how did he learn to play like that? He kind of took me under his wing, but there's a lot that he could have taught me, but he didn't. But I learned a lot that helped me through the years, and I've always kept them in mind when I'm playing because he was such a wonderful example musically.
Did he live in the neighborhood, or
Yes.
he lived in your neighborhood?
I'm trying to remember the name of the street. Idaho was across street. It might have been 6th Street, 6th and Idaho, or 7th, something like that. But and here's what happened. There were these traveling bands that came through all the time. And one time Lionel Hampton came. And Harold went down to the municipal auditorium. He took his trombone. And during the break, he went backstage. Somehow he got back there and he played for Lionel Hampton. He said, "Go home and pack your bag. You leaving with us tonight." And he did. And he stayed out for 2 years. And I always thought about that. I said, you know, one day somebody's going to take me with them.
Yep.
And I was waiting for that day, but I was waiting in vain. So I'm teaching over at Kennedy Junior High School, and the assistant principal was Melvin Todd. And Todd used to come up and say, "Maurice, if I had your talent, there's no way I would be here." And if he said it once, he said it 1,000 times. Sometimes he'd say, "I don't know why you're still here, Maurice," and he'd just walk off. And I started thinking about that. And I said, well, I'm waiting on Lionel Hampton to come and pick me up. Maybe I need to go where the action is. And that's when I went to California. I got involved, and guess what? I did a recording with Lionel Hampton. Yeah, I did. My name is on the album. Yeah.
Full circle.
So, yeah, those are some of the things that happened. You had some other questions you were going to ask.
Now, when you went to California, did you go by bus or plane, or how did you get there?
Oh, that's interesting.
Drove yourself,
That's
or what?
interesting. I had never been on a plane, but I'll tell you this before I get to that. I had been to Kansas City a couple times. My first wife had relatives there. We went to Kansas City, and they had a lot of musical activity. In fact, Charlie Parker was born in Kansas City, and so we went to his hometown. And I had been there, and then when I was in college at Langston, I joined a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. I wasn't really that interested in that kind of thing, but I was encouraged to do it, and I asked my sisters, I said, well, which fraternity should it be? And they said Kappa, so I went Kappa. Well, here's what happened. My senior year, they sent me to a national convention, and it was held in Detroit, Michigan. So I caught. They gave me funds for hotel and for for lodging, food, and all of that. I caught a train, and the train. Oh boy, I'll never forget. It went from here to Chicago, and there were two train stations. One was LaSalle, and the other, it's not coming to me right now. But when you get to Chicago, you have to cross the street. You have to leave this station and cross the street to the station that's going further north. It was like 5 below. And I'm trying to cross the street with my trombone and my suitcase. Oh boy, I never forget it. But I went to Chicago. I went to Detroit, and I went to the various Baker's Keyboard Lounge, the Bluebird Inn, and where all of these great Detroit players were playing, local guys that later became well-known. Curtis Fuller, Paul Chambers, Pepper Adams, all of those guys were playing there in the city. And I stayed there for a few days, and then I had a girlfriend who became my first wife, who was living in New York City. And she said, well, you could come here, Maurice. So I'm supposed to be at this convention, and I took the money that they gave me for transportation and lodging. I went to New York City. And when I went there, she was working in a lounge or whatever. Some of the musicians came in, and she introduced me to Lou Donaldson. And this was December of 1958. He said he was part of a group that was sponsoring an event on New Year's Eve, and he invited me to come to it, and I did. And I heard the great musician John Coltrane at that event. The only time I ever saw him, I heard him in person. But I was invited there by Lou Donaldson. And I'll never forget it. So I'm in the big city, New York, and I loved it. And I came back, and I graduated from Langston, and like I said, I went to OU. But in the Army, I was at this Army element of the Navy School of Music in Washington, D.C. So I got a chance to hear a lot of musicians there. It was very inspiring to me to do that. And so when I went to California, I had been to the big city a few times, but I don't know. I love the big city, and it proved to be very fruitful for me.
So from Oklahoma City, the first time you were out of Oklahoma City was to go to Arkansas?
Well, out for any period of time.
Early on.
Yes. When I went to school at Arkansas, I went to Arkansas State College in Pine Bluff.
Okay.
And
that was the first time you'd been away from
my family for any period of time, yes. And an interesting thing about that, I had contacted there was a radio announcer here, Ben Lloyd Tipton. He wasn't an announcer at the time, but he had been to school at Arkansas State. And he encouraged me to go there. He was on a basketball scholarship. And he said, Maurice, you need to come to Arkansas. So I listened to him, and I went. But I contacted the band director and asked for a scholarship. He said they didn't have any scholarship money, but I was welcome to come and be in the band. So I'm thinking to myself, well, once I get there and he hears me play, I'll get the scholarship. It didn't happen. I played in the band, but just like what happened at OU, to be fair about it, they treated me the same way. I was like a section leader. We did a lot of traveling, and we had those old broken down buses. We would leave after class on a Wednesday, say, and go to whatever city to play a parade or some kind of event. And we come back, and in the middle of the night, the bus would break down, 3 o'clock in the morning. And they have to be out there working on it. And we get back and we go to class all sleepy-eyed. But I was right there with the rest of them. They were on scholarship, but I was not. So when I came home for Christmas, I got in contact with the band director at Langston, Dr. Sims, and he said, Maurice, come on to Langston, and I got a scholarship for you. So when I went back to Arkansas after the Christmas holiday, I told Mr. Strong, who was the band director, I said, well, I'm leaving. And he said, well, wait a minute, let me see what I can do. And he came back the same day and said, I got a full scholarship for you. Well, that made me angry because I felt that if he's offering me a full scholarship now, he could have done it before. And my parents were struggling to pay my tuition, room and board and all of that. And these other lesser people were on scholarship. And so that angered me, and I just told him, I said, you know what? I promised that I would go to Langston, and I kept my promise, and I went there. And so I don't know if I answered your question.
No, it's fine. Yes. You're doing good.
All
All of this from a little house in Oklahoma City. It's just amazing. You've gone all over.
Yeah, I have. But now, this is one thing I want to mention, because we're actually I'm telling more about myself than about Oklahoma City.
But your roots got you there, so.
This is true. But this is the thing that sticks in my mind, and I just want to relate this, that when integration came in, it killed the East Side. Because we had all of these businesses. We were prohibited from going to other areas. We could go downtown. I remember shopping at John A. Brown department store. There was a Halliburton's. It's another big store down there, big department store. It's not coming to me right off.
I figured it was a Montgomery Ward, maybe.
There was a Montgomery Ward.
A Katz?
Katz department store, drugstore. It was something else. But anyway, we could do that. But then when I think it was my senior year in high school, the word got around that we could go to the Criterion Theater. Really? So I got on. Is it true that they said that, yeah, we don't discriminate and we don't, So we started we were so happy to do this. We started going to the Criterion Theater, but there were theaters on the East Side that began to suffer. The Aldrich, the Jewel Theater, and the East Side Theater. And they all faltered because everyone now is going to the Criterion. And we were able to go to restaurants over there, places like my family had a café. Our business began to dwindle. And others, whatever they had, they just went down the drain. And all of those places, we didn't realize it at the time. It was years later when I realized what had happened. And I was just as much a part of it as anyone else. We were happy to be liberated, so to speak, to be able to go to these other places that we didn't realize that it was harming the places that had served us faithfully through the years. And they went into demise. And so it just killed business on the East Side. The other thing that happened, about the time that, after I finished high school, I kind of left the city because I went to Arkansas first. I went to Langston, and I went to the Army and all that. I wasn't here for a lot of things, but urban renewal came in. They demolished all of those neighborhoods. We drove through there. My wife and I, she'd never been in all of that, and I was explaining stuff. They tore down all those homes. There's nothing there. It's just desolate. Well, what happened to the homes over there? Were those people displaced? Why did they have to lose their homes and all? I don't have an answer, but I see what happened. So, like I say, by that time I was venturing out, and I wanted to go to the big city, bright lights, big city. Here I come.
Yep.
And
well, is the house that you grew up still standing?
No.
No.
The house on on 4th Street, nothing is over there now.
Okay.
All of those homes are gone.
What kind of house was it?
Well, it was a fairly large house, because there was 6 in our family. Both my parents were there, and I had 3 siblings, so there was 6 of us in the home. And we had a baby grand piano in the living room. Well, that tells you something. Yeah. But then we moved from there because my family was renting. We moved from there to the home that they bought on Northeast 13th Street. And that was a 2-story home. It had 4 bedrooms, and but that's torn down also. So, my roots in that sense are gone. When I came back to visit, and I went to those areas and my homes were gone, I cried.
What about the cafe?
Well, that building is still there.
Okay.
There's something, I don't know if it's a residence now. I don't think it's a commercial business, but it's still there, and the numbers are right there on 330 Northeast 2nd. I showed it to my wife, and she said, "Yeah, that's it, Maurice." But I'm sorry, I forgot about this. I could have brought pictures.
That's okay.
That would have, but I didn't. I wanted to bring pictures of the band. I had a 13-piece band.
What was it called?
Maurice Spears.
Well, and I read that you were inducted into the Oklahoma Jazz Hall of Fame in 2004,
yes,
along with your brother.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was that a surprise?
Well, somewhat. I had other friends that were being inducted. For instance, Ernie Fields Jr. From Tulsa, and that's where the headquarters for that was, in Tulsa. Ernie had been inducted, and another one, Washington Rucker, who went to Booker T. Washington High in Tulsa, he had been inducted. They kind of promoted my induction into it. They were telling the people in charge, whoever they were, I don't remember their names now, because I think that organization has kind of gone defunct. Yeah. But they recommended me, and I knew that they were doing it, so when it came, it wasn't a real surprise. And I have pictures of that too, of the night of the induction.
We might have to do a round 2 then.
Yeah, and I've got pictures of myself playing. My brother was there, and he played the bass fiddle, and some very nice pictures. You know what? I didn't even think about all of this. But yeah, we were inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2004.
You have done quite well.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
I've had when that night, I didn't know I was going to have to make a little speech, but I did. And I told the audience, I said, I didn't know anyone was documenting these things. I was just having fun. But there's a record of the things. In fact, my youngest daughter told me, said, Maurice, there's a segment in Wikipedia about you.
There is. I read it. Yes.
And I didn't know that.
We need a YouTube of you actually playing though, so that we could hear you.
Well, I don't think you want to hear me now.
When was the last time you played?
Occasionally I'll pick it up and play. I have an urging now to do that, but what happens, I'll do it, I'll pick it up and I'll play for maybe 3-4 days, a week, 2 weeks, and then I put it down. And so I had concerts scheduled up to the pandemic, the lockdown. At the time of the lockdown, there were concerts scheduled in San Francisco, San Diego, Orange County. I even had one here at the Jazz Lab. My band that I had in Los Angeles called Bonsoir was going to do a concert at the UCO Jazz Lab. We had a date for June 30, 2020, but the Jazz Lab shut down. Everything shut down. Well, I kept practicing for a while, but when I began playing as a youngster, I had incentive. I wanted to play in the big time. Well, I've already been there. And everything shuts down. I'm an old man now. I don't know when it's going to open up again or if. I said, I'm not going to keep practicing. Well, that was a big mistake because I do have urges to play. But, it's kind of like the saying, it's easier to stay healthy than to get healthy. Once you stop playing and you're playing at a high level, it goes down. To pull it up again, oh boy, that's hard. That's hard work. So I don't think I'll ever perform again.
Well, let's not say never.
Well, that's yeah, you got a point.
Yeah.
It could happen.
It could happen.
I suppose. I don't see it happening.
Well, you really couldn't see yourself being in LA and traveling with Ray Charles either, so who knows?
Well, I tell you one thing. It was difficult for me to come back to Oklahoma City, even though it's my home. I have my roots here and know a lot of people like Rosetta. But in California, the thing that was so exciting to me is that you don't know from day to day when that telephone rings what it will bring. It might be a tour in Europe, Japan, might be a concert at Carnegie Hall, it might be the Hollywood Bowl, it might be a movie called, when I met Quincy, let me tell you this. We out of time now?
We got about 5 minutes, I think, before the next one's not here yet either, is he? So
Okay.
we'll roll until Kermit comes.
I want to tell you this. I began playing there in LA, and I had jobs. We would play recordings. Like I said, I had played with Nancy Wilson. I played with Aretha, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Little Stevie Wonder when he was just a kid, and all of that. But I became one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and we built a Kingdom Hall in Hollywood, and there was going to be a dedication of the Kingdom Hall. And so one of the members, there were other musicians in the congregation, and one of them wrote music and invited players to come in for the dedication. And he asked me to copy the music, and I did. Well, at the rehearsal, there was a musician that came there. His name was Oliver Nelson. His wife was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He came to the rehearsal, and he saw the music that I copied. We were introduced and like that. And then went on our way. And a couple of weeks later, he called me. And he said, Maurice, I saw the music that you copied, and I'd like for you to copy something for me. So he invited me to his home. I went there, and everything was fine. So I began working for him. He said, well, Maurice, he said, look, you're a music copyist, and you're a trombonist. He said, well, what do you really want to do? And I said, I would like to play trombone. He said, okay. He said, tell me who you work for. Because he'd never heard me play. He'd never even heard me hold or seen me holding the instrument. He just said, tell me who you work for. And so I told him. He said, well, if you work for them, you can work for me. He said, I have some things coming up, and I'll call you. Well, I'd heard that before. Yeah, right. Well, he did call. And that's when I began with the Ironside that later became $6 Million Man. But here's what happened. There were musicians coming to LA from New York, and I met some of them. And so one day, this guy that I had worked with at Kennedy Junior High School here in Oklahoma City he moved back home to Berkeley, California. Why he was here in Oklahoma, I never knew. But he came here to go to school at Langston, and he was now in Berkeley. He called me and said, Maurice, I'm over in Inglewood there in Los Angeles, and with some friends that drove down. He said, why don't you come over and just hang out with us? I said, okay. Well, when I got there, he and the friends were getting in a car about to leave. And he said, come on, Maurice, get in. And so I got in the car, and we rode to another place. We were going to Jerome Richardson, who was a musician that had come out from New York to work with the others that were coming out and getting into the film industry. When we got to Jerome's house, he was getting in his car. He said, come on, follow me. And we went to Quincy Jones' house. He had a lot of people there for some occasion. I don't know what it was. I never asked. And, a lot of food was there. And, So Reggie came and said, Maurice, I heard Jerome talking to Quincy. He said, he's a good player. We need to bring him into the family. I said, really? You heard that? He said, yeah. But no one said anything to me. A couple weeks later, the telephone rang. It was a movie called with Quincy Jones. The movie was called The New Centurions. And it still plays sometime. I don't think I've ever seen it. But this was my first job with Quincy Jones. And from there, everything just blossomed. Wow. Once I started working with Quincy, I went to Japan with them. We did some of everything. Oh, we had such a great time. It was wonderful. He had this big band that we played concerts in conjunction with Roberta Flack. So she would have her small group, and we would have the big band around it. So she played, and we would play, and we end up everyone playing. We did a lot of concerts like that. I went to the Monterey Jazz Festival for the first time with Quincy. We would go to Chicago to play for the Push Expo and all sorts of things. It was so it all started at Douglas High School right down on 5th and High.
Yeah, and with the bands marching by.
That's it. So I don't know. I must have left out some things that you probably wanted to hear.
No. Oh, you've done fine. I've covered what I had that needed to be covered, I think. Landmarks in the neighborhood. Were there certain smells and sounds that you remember from the neighborhood?
No. The things that I remember mostly is that there were a lot of oil wells.
So that motion.
And there were a lot of fruit trees. And none of those exist now.
No.
I don't know why, but they don't.
Because y'all shook them down on the fruit trees.
What was that? What she said?
You shook them all down.
Oh. You said you wouldn't tell.
Well, we'll wrap up and then say thank you very much. It's been great.
Well, thank you. It was good for me to walk down memory lane with some of these things, you know.
Yeah.
And I wish I had remembered to bring those pictures, but oh well.
I'm just glad you have pictures.
Yeah, I do.
Not everyone does.
I do. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll close it out then.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.